Hello. Well, I figured I'd do a short little video. This is more of kind of like a buyer's guide. Um, Things to look for, kind of what you need to know regarding the electrical and wiring diagrams for our cars. So what's pretty common, or what a lot of you guys will have, are books like these. These are kind of edition books that go with the service manuals for each year of our cars. So 82 Escorts and EXPs will have these books. This is the book that encompasses all the 82 models. This is the one that's specific for 82 EXPs and L7s. And then 83 has all four, 84 has all four, and I believe it continues like that through 85 all the way up into 88, or the last year of EXPs. They'll all just say whatever year, and then Escort links LN7 and EXP for the years that each are available. So LN7 stopped in 83, so you won't see that in 84 or higher. And also the EXP was put underneath the Escort category for 86 in forward. And there is an 85 and a half book. That book should also have EXP listed underneath Escort, so you'll only see 1985 and a 0.5, and I'll just say Escort links. Some will say dash Escort EXP underneath all of these, but just something to keep in mind, so that you know if you have an 87 EXP, as long as it says 87 Escort, that book's going to work for you just fine. So just to know that. As far as wiring differences go between the EXP and the Escort, the main thing is just the lighting. These have these large taillights, so they have more lights in the back. And that's kind of where the standard options end. Or I should say the standard options between each base level car. When you get into the options of each car, that's where you start seeing a few more differences. Things like the select Escorts, having rear wipers on them. Some of the interior functions, like the turbo models, have a boost light in the dash, and then everything underneath the hood is it varies a little bit from the normal EFI models, and the EFIs are very different from the carbs, and both of those are different from the CFIs, etc., etc. We could go on forever about this. But these don't encompass all that much. If we pop open the EXP LN7 one, you get a basic view of a number of functions. Things like how the wiper system works, cruise control, radio systems, some of the lights, some of the ignition and HVAC controls. And then, for whatever reason, there were actually 2 editions of this particular book. Same part number, same front and rear cover, but on the inside, one only has like 12 pages, or 18 pages, and the other one has a whopping 18 pages too. Oh, well then my apologies. This is one that came with one of my cars then. So I do have 2 of these. What is separate though is the EXP and LN7 from this one, which encompasses all of the 82 EXPs and Escorts, and this one's a little bit more significant. But there's only some overlap. If you have an EXP, you really need both. And if you have only an Escort, you really only need this one. more the merrier. Each of these guys, you can see they're not all that thick, especially when you get to like this one EXP one that is only 18 pages. You can fetch these online, even though it's only for 1 year. You can fetch them online for only about $5. that's 2024 prices, where everything is still hopped up. All these normal books, you can get these for 7 to 10. Nothing too crazy, and they do well. They do a good job at illustrating things, but the bigger thing is, yes, they have some of the wiring diagram visuals, but then they also have a troubleshooting system next to it, along with a description of how some of the circuits work and what you should expect each component or circuit to be doing. Because it's fine to know where power or how power gets to your fuel sender. It's another thing to know how much power or how many volts you're getting out of it when it's empty versus full. That's what you need on the troubleshooting side of things. So these are extremely handy. They work quite well. It's a very useful, quick help or quick reference guide for when you're trying to fix something real quick in your car. But there are other resources at your disposal. These are factory wiring diagrams. And I actually have in front of me every year of EXP except for 88. Because for whatever reason, 87 through 1990 Ford literature, awfully hard to find. Whether it's catalogs or brochures or any sort of manuals or even the price guides. Price guides don't really exist for 88 on up, or 88 to 90. I don't know why, but anywho, I have every year in front of me except for 85. Yep. And 85 and a half. And it's simply because the vendor that I was getting most of these from didn't have it on hand. And that's fine. I'll survive for now. If I see one for sale, I'll nab it. But 85 versus 84, it's almost exactly the same. But if there is an 85 and a half one, like there is for these, it would say 85.5. If there is a wiring diagram that for 85 and a half, I will go and get it, because that should be identical to the 86, but we get it just to be sure. But 85 versus 84, that's going to be identical. You're not going to see any kind of electronics difference in there. But this is what the factory wiring diagrams look like. If what you're looking at online doesn't look like these, you're probably not getting what you're wanting. So it folds out into this monstrosity. That's about 2 feet across. And something like, I think 14 inches tall. Ash, these are not your pedestals. So just know that this is kind of what you're looking for. For 81 to 86, they all look just like this. You can see that here because I have 81. My 82 one is used. It actually came out of a binder from the factory. Most of these come hole punched like this, so that they can go in a like plastic or metal ring binder of sorts, kind of like a school notebook with the metal windings. And this one was in one, and it was removed simply by tearing it out, and that's why this one looks all goofy. And then it was, after that, folded up so it could fit in a glove box. But for the most part, they'll look like this, kind of pristine. For whatever reason, 86 got different hole punches. It got a 3-ring binder hole punch. And then you got to 87, and the sucker gets extremely tall. Look at this. We're at a whopping, what, 18 inches tall here. And it still folds out to about 2 feet across. This thing is just crazy. Crazy. So that's what you need to look for if you're getting an 87. And 88 might look like this too. I don't really know. If it does, I'll say so in the description. But how are these? What do they do? How do they work? How do I need to know how to use them? Well, how you use them is first open it up. So on the cover page, well, except for this 87, on the 87 it's the next page. But on the cover page here, actually lists out every circuit or every function. Just off the top here, you can see each of these systems. And let's say you need to check out your fuse panel. So you look down here, power distribution. Well, that's our fuse panel. Page 1. Fantastic. We'll go there. And same with everything else. Windshield wipers and radio functions. So this would be the keys switch, charge, start, and run, and ignition, along with charging. All that's hooked into one because there's a bunch that goes in and out of the ignition switch. And then right next to that, it actually gives you a key for each of the wire color codes. It's all pretty basic. And then you just know that any that have hashed lines will have a H in parentheses, and any that have dotted lines will have a D in parentheses. And then stripe is understood and has no color key. So the stripe is going to be if you had a red wire with a yellow stripe, you'd see R-Y or a R slant. Crap, I don't remember what it's called. But yeah, it would look kind of like that. So now you kind of know what the colors are. And this is actually surprisingly important because when you open up your car, you're going to find there's a lot of discoloration. Not just from them being 40 years old, but anything underneath the hood. There's been a lot of heat cycles. Some of the things underneath the hood have actually seen quite a bit of weather. There are parts of the car where water comes through, and that actually discolors the dye to an extent, and especially if your wires under the hood are grubby. And there's a few wires under the hood that do actually discolor from UV exposure. So having this handy is very helpful, knowing that, oh, there is a tan colored wire. It's not just yellow that's faded. And yeah, there is a brown one. It's not just a dirty tan. And then light blue and dark blue, things you need to keep in mind. Also the white and grays, don't mix those up. Just know that there is supposed to be both. And this chart is for every wire color in the car. This isn't a chart for every wire color Ford has. So you know that your car will have all of these colors. And it's pretty vague on what combinations you'll find. But that's because when you get into that, things become a little bit option specific. Slightly below that, we get our bulb chart. So any bulb that you need to be replacing, simply come down here and you're able to see what kind of light bulb size it has. Pretty convenient, but for the most part, most of them are the same, and some of them, like a lot of these lights, they'll say that it's like 194 and 161. Those are actually, for the most part, interchangeable. If you want to go through here and write down which ones your car takes, you could go and just count up how many of each, and then you can have your shopping list for when you hunt them all down online and pick out LEDs or whatever. And then here's where we get a little bit more specific to our little main menu here, where we actually can view each component. 2 types of batteries, 2 types of alternators, and everything. More lamps, cigarette lighters, the starter relay. that's about the only one. Goes over most of the radio stuff here, and then there's a list of switches at the tail end of that. Any kind of switch that's being kind of funky in your car, whether it's a door switch, a headlight switch, seatbelt switch, horn, whatever, you'll find most of it listed here. And then you simply go to the page. So let's say that we're looking for our heater switches or HVAC switches. So we're at page 9, and then the quadrant that we want to be looking at, that's LOC, that's the location. For our heater controls, we want to be looking at B2 and E2. So how that works, so you'll see a grid on the side and across the top on all these, and they are labeled. Alphabet on the left, numbers up top. So when you're looking for something like B2, you find B and you come across until you reach 2. And you know whatever component you're looking for is going to be in this area of that page. So let's do that. So we want the heater switches of page 9 B2. So let's fold this back in so that it's more compact and we don't risk ripping anything. So I said page 9 B2. Here we are. Oh, 10. 9 is just going to be on the back side of 8. These are not individual pages. They are fronts and backs. So the evens will always be on the front and the odds will be on the back, except when you get to like the 87 bucks. Some of those are vice versa. But we wanted B2. Oh, there we go. So there's B and 2. Look at that. Heater blower switch. Bingo. That was easy. And then once you get here, you can actually see the entire wiring diagram related to that component that you're looking for. And the whole circuit. And if it extends beyond just these basic components and wires and connectors between them, you can actually go up top and you'll see where they hook into. Almost all the time you'll see go to the fuse panel, power distribution. Sometimes you'll see them go to ignition switch. You'll also see them go out to more lights. Plenty of stuff. And then it lists and describes every connector here. Even gives you a connector number. Let's say I'm underneath the dashboard and I'm looking for this funny connector. I've identified it out of all these. I know that this one is the one that best matches the one that I'm looking at underneath the dash. And this one on the left here does too. So I'll keep that one in mind. And this one on the top right. But I match up my colors. My colors are exactly what this one is. So I find that it's the AC blower motor resistor. And I should have found it on the right hand side of the blower housing underneath the instrument panel. Now I know that it's connector C606. C is for connector. So I know that's C606. So let's go up here and let's try to find it. Quite a few connectors, but I think we can find it. Here we are, C606. So that is the connector for the blower motor resistor. And there's a few others. You can see that there's actually a 602, and that doesn't go to the resistor itself, but it's a component a little further down the chain. There we go. It's actually the one for the blower motor itself. What's for a different resistor? That would be for the AC only cars? Oh, for the non-AC cars. There you go. So that's something to keep in mind when you're going through these. a lot of times there'll be like parentheses and it'll say AC only or car only. And that's where you have to pay a little bit more attention when you're going through these. Otherwise, you'll be looking for something you don't have or trying to troubleshoot something that you can't fix because it doesn't exist on your car. But one thing I forgot to mention is that these books from 81 to 87 always include the EXP. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that in 82, you can see that my 82 book has Escort and Lynx, but the one for EXPs that year is a separate book. And generally these are included together. So you get the EXP book, which is this, a little thinner than the Escort one, and that comes with the Escort one. It's usually like that by default, but not always. We found out that that's the case for 82. 82, they're separate books. In 83, they are... Oh, yep, because this one's my 83 Escort. This was my 83 EXP. So, again, for 83, separate book. For 84, they're conjoined. So for 84, you can see on the bottom it says Escort, Lynx, and EXP. So this entire booklet, it's a little thinner than the others since they've managed to combine a lot of items because they're joined. And then for 86 on up, they should all be joined completely. And I believe this is the case from 81 to 90. You'll see these model numbers referenced throughout the books. The things to know for sure that the model 67 is going to be the EXP and EXP only. Any that are listed model 74 are going to be the Escort wagon specific. And then 61 and 58, those are two that I've been struggling to tell apart because the wiring wise, the only difference between these two cars is that the 4-door, I call it the sedan, the 4-door has door switches in the back 2 doors, and the coupe, it only has 2 front doors, so it only has 2 door switches on it, excluding the hatch. That's the only difference between these guys, and it's the only reason why I haven't been able to tell them apart. So as you look through these books, you'll actually see these two grouped together 95% of the time. There's only 1 or 2 instances where you'll see one instead of the other. And like I said, it should only be for those door switches. But the problem is inside these books, doesn't seem to differentiate between that. It just lists all 4 door switches and expects you to know that if you have a 2-door, you're just not going to see the other 2. So that's one thing you'll need to know. But that more or less covers everything. I do want to find a spot where we can show these each different models, but it's not too important because the differences between each of these body styles, like I said earlier, it's mostly the lights, exterior lights, mostly, actually almost completely the tail lights. Granted, EXPs have different connectors on the front indicators and pretty much all the rear lights. They have different connectors, so you're going to see that for sure. And then things like the wagons, they actually have 2 license plate lights instead of 1 for the sedan and coupe. But otherwise, they're kind of all completely the same. But why would you need these over the colored books? Well, the colored books aren't all that expansive, actually. They do have some limitations. They do a great job of describing how you should be troubleshooting electrical issues amongst your car and each circuit, but they don't completely show every circuit. And then I'm sure you're asking in your head, hey, well, why aren't these all I need? Well, because granted, some of you can troubleshoot just fine. That's fantastic. But one thing we found out is that for 83s, 83 is the most mystic of our cars. They had the most options. It was the tail end of 83 was the transition to 84. 84 showed a huge change in everything up front. Different suspension, different motor mounts, different transmission mounts. Um, 85 had a different transmission, but in 83 you're adding a transmission. 84 they changed it. 85 they changed it completely. Woofda. So a lot went on, and 83s we've seen a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Things like the radiators being not as wide and for no apparent reason, and that's extremely common on the GTs, but not on the normal cars, or I should say extremely common on the high output 1.6s, but not on the normal ones. And all these crazy little things. And once we get into it, we find out that it's the same story for the electrical. Your AC and cruise control components actually vary slightly from from what we find in the books, and we're still trying to nail that down. And we found this out when I was helping a buddy with his 83. He had an 83 with a stubby radiator. And we were looking. I believe he was looking for... He wanted to find the upshift indicator system. So let's find that for you here. Okay, so I found the section. He was interested in fixing his upshift light. So in 83s, I believe 81 and 82 Escorts might have had this as well, but pretty much any Escort that didn't have a tach had an upshift light, since there was no tach. And even the Escorts that did have a tach, a lot of them would have these upshift indicators integrated into the dashboard. It would be one of the warning lights or idiot lights around the cluster. But he wanted to get his working. Just because then his car would actually have a feature or two in it. Base model Escorts, and there's not much inside them, so do everything you can. And we start looking into it, and holy grimoly, this is quite the circuit. But what's this? For manual transmission, this is the fuel saver model. So this would be a car that's been optioned with the fuel saver package, fuel saving package. And then this is for the manual transmission without the fuel saver package, nor is it the one for electronic fuel injection. Oh crud, now there's one for EFI. And you'll notice that there isn't one for an automatic because it just shifts itself. But boy, so that's a lot of diagrams to look through. But first we find the one that's relevant to you. Probably manual transmission without the fuel economy, because the fuel saver package, kind of rare. And the EFI, very rare. But there's a lot of components here. There's a lot of components here. First, we had to figure out where the power for it came from. So we see that there's actually a couple fuse blocks that it comes from. Yeah, one circuit comes from 2 fuse blocks. And that's because it's hooked into the light switch. That way it could have a dimming function at night. So your upshift light isn't freaking glowing as hot as the sun. So when your lights are on, it should actually dim to some extent, or be brighter. I'd have to look at the switch out closer, but anywho, and you'll see that it even says hot and start or run, and this one's hot all the time, so that you know under what conditions you should be finding power. And we go through and oh hey, there's the light. Actually, that was quick and easy. It's right on top of the fuse box. Well, just off the fuse block. Okay, well, so now we just got to figure out how this shunts to ground so that that bulb can light up. Oh, okay, well, we got a dimming resistor here, and oh, yeah, a little relay, so if we get a little bit of power from our headlight switch, this closes, bypasses the resistor, so it glows brighter. Okay, electronic ported vacuum switch, what the heck is that? Where is that? Open with coolant below 95 degrees. Oh, okay. Keep going along. Oh, top gear switch. So that's open in top gear. Yep, because when you're in fourth gear in the 4-speed or fifth gear in the 5-speed, you can't upshift anymore. So if you're in top gear, this goes open and that light will never come on. Also down here, the vacuum switch. If your coolant's below 95 degrees, this will be open. They don't want you to shift yet. Actually, they just want you to remain parked until your coolant gets up to temp. Let's see. You also have power going this way. It goes through the AC fan controller. That's a different circuit. It's just saying that you're going to find that on this piece of wire that the voltage for this timer goes through. So it goes through this timer, and the timer, it closes after a 0.9 second delay. So when you turn the key on to start or run, this will only close after almost 1 second. So you'll never see the shift light come on until a second after you've turned it on. And you still have to satisfy all these other situations before that even lights. So both of those will shunt to ground after that, kind of. Well, on their way to ground, they go through another vacuum switch. Here we have a diesel fuel shutoff. And now this closes above 4 inches of vacuum. So if you have a lot of vacuum, so you have the most amount of vacuum when your throttle plate is almost closed. So that would be when you get the most amount of vacuum. So that switch switches, shunts power down here, goes through this RPM module. Okay, but now we got more components. And this is controlled by running in hot. Yep, fuse link. So this must just go straight to the key switch, but it's got a fusible link under the hood. RPM module. This will close above 1800. So, geez, now we got all these things going on. First off, you won't see the light with coolant below 95 degrees. Second, you'll never see it in 4th gear. Third, you'll never see it within 1 second of turning the key. Fourth, you'll never see it unless you're achieving 4 inches of vacuum. 5, you'll never see it below 1800 RPMs, which is pretty funny because that's actually when you'd see 4 inches of vacuum. Because the lower your RPMs, the more vacuum you have, unless you close off the throttle when your RPMs are high. As your tach comes down, that your vacuum is up, because your engine is pumping a lot of air, but your throttle plate's just keeping it shut. So the engine is just sucking until it just slows down to almost nothing. And now it finally grounds out and works. So holy gramoly. So we had a deep dive into that, and then figuring out how the circuit worked. It talks about each of the situations that need satisfying that I've talked about. And then it actually gives you a diagram of where you should be finding these things. Well, here's where things get crappy. In his 83, a bunch of these components were not where they said they had to be. Some of these might have been, I believe this one's actually the EFI, the fuel pump relay. Yeah, so that relay is only going to be on the EFI, same with the ECC power. But you should see this somewhere among your car, but not necessarily where it says. Those are the things you need to know, especially these ones up here. These can be about anywhere. He had found some of these components. Left-hand fender apron. Yeah, he had found some of these near the front left quarter panel. He had seen some of these underneath the glove box. He'd seen some of these underneath the fuse panel, a couple hiding behind the dash even. So these are all over the place, not necessarily where you find them, but that's just something to keep in mind. If you have an 83, you're going to run into some funky stuff like this. And that's only talking about the factory things. There are some dealer options in these cars, things like dealer AC. And those are really going to stress you out trying to figure out what's what, where things should be, and what kind of components you should be replacing things with. But just wanted you all to have that heads up. And wanted to let you know that these wiring diagrams, and when I get to them, I'll see if I can do these too. Being that they're in books, they're a little harder to do unless I go through and yank some staples. But through work, I do have access to a massive photocopier. So I will be able to actually fold all these out and scan them for you guys at some point, and they'll be available in my normal shared Google Drive resource that all of you have access to. And then when that day comes, I'll put that link in the description. You'll be able to view all these for free. Because you're welcome to buy these, and I strongly suggest buying these, but they come in varying conditions, as seen here. But a lot of times they're just superb. No discoloration, no sun fade, no water damage, no folding, no tears, no rips, no missing pages, etc., etc., etc. And they usually come at a good price. You can get each one of these for only about $10 to $20, depending on the year. And like I said, if you're getting an EXP one, make sure you get an EXP one. Or if your year is one where it's included in both, 84, for instance, make sure you know that, so you're not spending hours searching for something that doesn't exist. And if you're getting, like, if you have an 82 EXP, you don't need the Escort book. You can just get the EXP book if you'd prefer. And same thing if you have an Escort. If you have an 81 Escort, you don't need any EXP book. That's for sure. But if you have an 83 Escort, well, you don't need to get the EXP book. You can just get the Escort one. It'll be dandy. If you have a Tempo, you need the Tempo book. Keep that in mind, okay? Now, at some point here, they did combine... At some point, they combined this with the Tempo. And that's something you'll need to keep an eye on. And if you have a diesel, I don't know how much these colored books, I don't know how much these colored books cover your diesel specific needs. That's a little bit beyond my head because I don't have a diesel. But I know everything underneath the hood is going to be different, even though the rest of the car's wiring should be the same. But I've rambled for a lot more than I needed to, but I felt like some of these intricacies were important to describe and actually show. So now you know what to look for. If there's any questions, do let me know. I'm here to help. And have a good one.